this kind of influence of the music just being a bit harder, more aggressive, more industrial, the sounds of like clanging machinery, and also the horror elements, the down tuning of the instruments. This all kind of created something quite unique that, even though, a lot of the music, if you listen to the first few Black Sabbath albums, it is very bluesy. The blues influence is still very much there, but there's something about it that makes you think, okay, no, this now is heavy metal music.
Welcome to episode 103 of the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. It's been a little slow. Since the Bass Shed Academy launch. Just kind of took a little time off. Now that the Bass Shed Academy is kind of up and running, I still have a lot of administrative stuff to do about all that. Just paperwork and blah, blah, blah. The fun part. The fun part. And I was thinking about this the other day. When did being a musician turn into all this stuff? Yeah, that part kind of sucks. Man. But whatever. I like it. I do like it. There's a sense of gratification that happens with doing it all, especially with the nonprofit. Like, hopefully creating some opportunities for students, performance-wise. I got some arrangements that were written for the Bass Shed Academy. Like, I was talking to one of the instructors, Chris. He's a classical player over at Lima, and we were talking about just music and repertoire one time, and Chris is really knowledgeable not only about classical bass repertoire, but he also teaches like the history of rock at a couple colleges, I think. And so it's really fun to talk to him just about music, because he's coming from a lot of different places. Like, what he knows is he's got a lot of information about music and pop culture and popular music and all that stuff. And we were talking about how there's no real repertoire for, students to be able to play that stuff. Like popular tunes. Maybe there is, and I just don't know of it. I mean, that is highly likely that there's things in the world I don't know about. Right? So maybe there is. But I had an arranger friend write out some arrangements for a double bass trio, and we're going to be launching a class, a performance class through the Bass Shed Academy, which is there's going to be two double bass trios, right? One at the kind of high school, middle school, high school level, then one at the collegiate level of playing. And it's going to be kind of student driven. So like, I'll have some already prepared. But then also, like, I want because it's a trio, there's each person, like, pick a tune, like pick a pop tune you would want to play, or you think could work well in this instrumentation of three double basses, and pump out some arrangements of that, and then we're gonna look to do a recital coming up, and so I'm in the works on that. That's happening. That's one of the things that's happening at the Bass Shed Academy. The other thing is finalizing the Working Pro course with Mike Viseglia. And we're going to talk about a lot of aspects of being a musician and a freelancer. Obviously, as it pertains to being a bassist, because that's what I do, and that's what Mike does. But yeah, things you wouldn't normally learn in school that are real world application things for surviving as a freelancer. So Mike and I are finishing that up. What I do know that I'm doing today is I'm headed back into the studio. By the time this podcast is released, the pre-orders for my album will be available. I'm doing it as singles. I'm going to have one tune up by the time this podcast comes out on Wednesday. That tune, if you listen to last week's episode of the podcast, I was a little weird, right? I wasn't weird. I was a little, I didn't know what I was going to call the tune yet, right? I had a bunch of tunes written, and then I was looking at them all on kind of like the program of the album, and too many of them started with the letter S. It bothered me. I don't know why it bothered me, but it just bothered me. So this tune was originally titled Sunday Nocturne, but given how the tune what we ended up doing with some production things, and I had written a tune years ago that never saw the light of day. It's, I don't know, on a hard drive somewhere. Yeah, I'd been playing around with the nocturne feel of writing. Nocturne means song inspired by the night. And so I'd been playing around with that quite a bit, and that's something that always inspires me, is nighttime, actually. And so I had a tune called Winter Nocturne that was a very different tune, but I jacked that title for this one. So, all that being said, that was the backstory. It used to be called Sunday Nocturne, and probably only podcast listeners will know this because the song is just going to be released as Winter Nocturne. So, that is the single coming out. What's going on that tune? It's in a really slow 5/4, and I play upright on it. What else? It's kind of a vibes feature. That's how we did it in the studio. So Nick Mancini is the vibraphonist, and kind of features him on a chorus. Then we're out. Yeah, so that's the first single, Winter Nocturne. Headed back into the studio today to finalize the second one that will come out in about a week. Yeah, this will all be available for pre-order at Bandcamp, and it's Brian Roberts Bass at Bandcamp, or however they do their URLs. If folks that follow the Bass Shed on social media, I'll be talking about it all on all those platforms. So that's what's happening with the record. That was what was happening with the Bass Shed Academy. The normal Bass Shed website is I'm revamping that, adding some new stuff. I think those are the highlights. Those seem to be the highlights of what's going on. I'm headed down to Lemur Music. When am I headed down there? I'm headed down there later this week. Lemur Music, lemurmusic.com. Everything you need for the double bass can be found at lemurmusic.com. Stop by the website, check them out. There is a link to the Bass Shed Academy on their website. And that is, I got to plug in the new website, connect with theirs. But yeah, you can learn more about the Bass Shed Academy through Lemur Music. Stop by lemurmusic.com. Also, Lemur Music and I are going to be at ISB in Michigan over the summer. For listeners that may be at ISB, stop by the booth or booths. Both booths. Booths? Is booths a word? Kind of sounds like booze. Booths. Stop by our booth. But that makes it sound like we're sharing a booth. I don't think we're sharing a booth. Anyways, we'll be at the ISB in Michigan. So you can stop by and check that out. And, that's a whole thing. And then, not too long after that is NAMM. And, doing that again. So that's all happening. That's what's happening. All right, my guest on the podcast is Becky Baldwin. Becky Baldwin is a metal player. For regular listeners of the podcast, I don't delve into the metal world a lot. So it was great to have her on the podcast, talk about what she's up to within metal. And this conversation takes so many turns. At one point, we're discussing the consciousness of dolphins. Yeah, we went there. I don't even know how it ended up there. I mean, now I do because I had the conversation. But at the time, I never went into the interview and thinking yeah, we should probably. I gotta find out what she thinks about the consciousness of dolphins. This conversation takes so many fun turns, and we talk about so many aspects of metal and of music and of genre and how those relate to different attributes and maybe ideologies within the world. It was a really great interview, and Becky is in Birmingham, UK. She talks about her upbringing and when she started playing the bass and how she got into metal specifically. She talks about going to college, and while she was there, she studied with Stuart Clayton, who, for regular listeners of the podcast, was on episode 31 of the Bass Shed podcast. And so then that kind of opened her up to some different genres of music and stuff. And as she got into that, we talk about sound production. We talk about, obviously, what bass she's playing. But we really spend most of the time talking about metal. And I don't know about metal. So she taught me a lot about this genre. And then, as I do, we went off on a bunch of tangents. But they're all very interesting to me, first and foremost. And I don't is just reflecting back on the interview. Like, I don't think Becky or I thought that a conversation about bass would end up talking about some of the things we talked about. But fantastic interview. You can check out her website at beckybaldwinbass.com. I will have a link up to that at thebasshed.com/podcast/Becky Baldwin. I will also have some links up to her social media sites and places where you can check out her playing. So definitely stop by her website for more information, and stop by thebasshed.com/podcast/Becky Baldwin. We'll have links up there. Fascinating interview. Fascinating. I love when the conversations go so many places, kind of take on this life and trajectory of their own. I had a blast. And here it is. Here's my talk with bassist Becky Baldwin.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Yep.
Nice. Is that all merch behind you right now?
Oh, no.
Oh.
It's just my t-shirts and stuff.
Okay, it's just your closet.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What part of the UK are you in?
I'm in Birmingham.
Birmingham. All right. I don't know that much about it. Now, I saw on your website, you called this the home of metal.
Yes. Yep.
Is that, what's the history of Birmingham and metal?
Well, Black Sabbath were I grew up in this area of the country.
Okay.
And they created heavy metal, according to a lot of us.
Okay.
Also Judas Priest are kind of local. Napalm Death. There's a lot of that early heavy metal bands coming from this area.
Okay.
And there's still quite a big heavy metal
there's
culture,
still a strong scene for it over there?
There's still a good scene. Yeah.
Interesting. I know nothing about heavy metal, and you're the first heavy metal bassist on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you're gonna be educating me a lot about metal.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I'd love to do that.
Let's also start. How'd you get into? Now, you started on piano, correct?
Yeah.
And then you got into the bass at what age?
I was 13 when I got my bass guitar. Yeah.
Okay. And was it straight into metal and learning metal tunes off the radio and stuff? Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, I think the main reason I wanted to play bass was because I started getting into at least hard rock and punk and also kind of metal. I didn't really know. I couldn't really tell the difference between these different genres at first, but I was definitely on my way to heavy metal, and so that was the first kind of stuff I wanted to learn.
Now knowing what you know about metal now, what characteristics do you define metal by? What defines metal over just hard rock?
I guess it would be the intensity. So I guess hard rock would be, I don't know. I don't know. I guess there's quite a few things. I don't know. It's so hard. You have to be it's just heavy. It's just heavier. But I don't know. I guess the speed,
okay.
If it's thrash metal, that would give it away quite easily because it's a lot faster.
Sure.
And then I guess, but also if it's a lot slower, if it's more doom metal, then it'll be a lot slower than hard rock. So I don't know. I think
so. Those terms are going to refer to the tempo of doom versus thrash, or is it just an intensity? I mean, those
I
can go
think,
hand in hand, obviously, also.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think, that there's a few things at play. Like, I think also even like the subject matter of the lyrics can
Okay.
kind of differentiate you a little bit. Like, I think where Black Sabbath were kind of separated themselves a bit more from hard rock was the kind of horror elements of the lyrics that they were bringing into it and making the music actually sound more scary.
Okay.
Whereas hard rock at the time was still like scary to your parents because it's like
Yeah,
sexy,
well, all
like
young
yeah.
music
So
is scary to old people.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, hard rock's going more for a kind of sexy and like pleasant approach, whereas
Okay.
metal was like it was always trying to be a bit scary and a bit different and out there. So I guess that's like the main thing that where it kind of separated. And then I guess it's just, you just have to ask yourself, does this sound more like Black Sabbath or does it sound more like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin and the bands that were like kind of on the cusp of being metal, but not quite really. So you'd kind of just call them hard rock, I guess.
Okay, that's an interesting thing what you said about scary and like kind of the connection to horror, because I understand it if I listen to it or if I view metal musicians, I can understand it, but I never consciously made that connection.
Yeah, yeah, like it's one of those things where people who are into metal also happen to usually be into like horror films and stuff. So you can always just,
Right.
if you meet someone who's into metal, you're like, "What's your favorite horror film?" And they'll have some kind of encyclopedic
Okay, well,
knowledge.
that
So
being said,
yeah,
what's your favorite horror film?
at the moment, I really enjoyed Midsummer. It's a kind of newer horror film, but yeah, I used to be
Okay,
more into like the older stuff, like The Exorcist and Nightmare on Elm Street and
from the
Hellraiser and stuff.
I mean, I haven't seen any of those. When
Okay.
when was The Exorcist? That was like the 70s.
Yeah,
Probably
I think
look
like
that up.
mid 70s, mid to late 70s, maybe.
I've never seen it. Is it still
Oh,
scary? Like if you
yeah, I
watch it
think
now, is
so.
it still
I
really?
haven't watched it in a long time, but yeah, no, I think it would still be pretty scary.
I'm looking this up. 73,
70,
1973.
oh,
Old.
yeah.
Okay, so you're
Yeah, I
13.
mean,
Like,
that shocked people as well, in the 70s, all this
yeah.
kind of music was trying to be shocking, and so was film, I guess. I guess film has always tried to shock people, but
Was there a lot of heavy
yeah.
metal in the movie? Like the
There's no
soundtrack?
heavy metal in the movie, I don't think.
Really?
No. No, it's all like tubular bells and stuff. It's all Mike Oldfield in the soundtrack. But right, or like I don't know if that was like at what point that kind of association with The Exorcist and Mike Oldfield's tubular bells exactly
Right.
happened. But yeah, that's the piece of music that goes along with it.
Fascinating. So what is kind of the history of metal? Then where did it come out of? Did it come out of,
Um,
I mean, most music comes out of some kind of underground culture and then gets popularized. But I'm not asking you if you know, I'm not asking for a whole dissertation or masterclass on the history of metal, but what is the history of metal? Where does it come from?
so according to me, Black
That's a
Sabbath
great
invented
source. That's a great source.
Black Sabbath invented heavy metal in like 68, 69 when they were writing their first album.
Okay.
And so they were heavily influenced by bands like the Rolling Stones and the
Sure.
Beatles. Uh, but it was Geezer Butler, their bass player,
Hmm.
who wrote a lot of the lyrics. And he had become quite interested in like horror films. And he was more fascinated by the fact that people they wanted to go to the cinema to be scared and they pay money to be scared.
Right, right.
And they started getting more interested in the kind of that kind of like occultist witches and stuff like this. And he's like, well, if people like being scared in film, maybe they want it in music. So, they started using that kind of soundscape. And also the kind of differences between metal and metal as it was then, like emerging was also the city of Birmingham is quite like an industrialized kind of city, or it was in like in the late 60s.
Okay.
And they all have quite all of the Black Sabbath members have quite working class backgrounds. They were kind of working in factories, and as a result, Tony Iommi lost a part of his finger
Wow.
in an accident at the factory, and he kept playing through it, but it was a bit harder, and he ended up deciding to loosen his strings to make it easier to play and play bends and stuff. And thus we got drop tuned guitars, and that kind of became a big thing in metal. Like it kind of developed more into that later on, but this kind of influence of the music just being a bit harder, more aggressive, more industrial, the sounds of like clanging machinery, and also the horror elements, the down tuning of the instruments. This all kind of created something quite unique that, even though, a lot of the music, if you listen to the first few Black Sabbath albums, it is very bluesy. The blues influence is still very much there, but there's something about it that makes you think, okay, no, this now is heavy metal music.
Right. Interesting. So do you detune your bass? Do you detune it to D, like everything down a whole step?
Sometimes, yeah. On my band Fury, our latest album, Born to Sin, is actually down tuned to D. But to be honest, like a lot of bands didn't really, didn't necessarily do that all the time. Like it's not a like thing you have to do, but like it kind of created a I don't know, an interest in like the kind of lower, chunkier riffs that are like big part of heavy metal.
Right. Okay.
But I prefer to play in standard. Like, I don't know. I much prefer like a bass, 4-string bass in perfectly like E standard, 440 concert pitch. I don't know. I just like the convenience, I guess. And when like you're talking to another musician and you're like, okay, yeah, we're tuned to D, and then you're like, okay, yeah, play a C, and they're like, oh, do you mean C or do you mean B flat or do you mean D? And you're like, whoa, I hate that kind of.
How are you referring it to it? Like, are you still talking in standard tuning, or are you talking in drop tuning?
And and then you end up referring to like just being like, just say fret 3, and you just feel so dumb.
Just play this note right here, and then just play the note for him. That one, hear it. Play that note.
I don't know, that's one of the reasons I prefer E, and just the hassle of retuning or having to be like, oh, I've got to swap bass, damn it, or adding drop tune pedals and all this business. I'd rather not do it, but like, I don't know, like there's a lot of really cool music that came out of the kind of drop tuning stuff.
Sure. So going back, you started playing bass and learning metal. Did you get into other genres also, or did you kind of just like, once you landed on metal, you just kind of really found your gateway into music through metal?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of, it felt like my main home in what I like listening to, and what I wanted to pursue the most as a bass player. That I found like the most exciting bass lines for me were in the metal genre. But other kind of, I also enjoyed playing punk and other kind of rock music, a lot of like a prog rock I was into. Later on, I got more into like funk. I just find they're very fun bass lines, not so much like the slap stuff, but the kind of like tight finger picky, like 16th note, that kind of thing, like Rocco Prestia, is it, from Tower of Power? Yeah, I really loved his bass lines. They were really fun to do. But also because I'm a fingerstyle player anyway, a lot of metal bass players these days tend to play with a plectrum, and I'm more of a fingerstyle.
A plectrum, is that what Americans call a pick?
Yes.
Yeah, I've never heard it called a plectrum. That sounds like some fancy gadget. No, it's just a pick. Wow. That's funny. Okay. The terminology is hilarious. Yeah. You're right. No, that's not common. When playing metal though, I mean, is the pick to kind of, because, I mean, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but from your time in the metal scene, metal bass players that used to be guitar players, so they're just comfortable with a pick, or is it really for more of a sharper, edgier sound? Because you're going to have a kind of an edge to the note with a pick or a plectrum that you won't have, just playing with your hands.
Yeah, definitely. I think both, really. I think there are a lot of bass players out there that choose a pick because they came from playing guitar and it felt more comfortable. But then I think it's become more of the standard sound for a lot of modern metal bass players, like that higher attack that you can get from a pick, and that, like, I don't know, just removing the fleshy tones that,
Right, it's not a round sound, like it's a very metallic sound, like probably bright strings, tone knobs cranked, all that stuff. How do you, so what's your main bass that you're using for the metal stuff?
It's the this one, the Rickenbacker 4001.
Oh, nice.
From 1977 it was made.
Oh, so wow.
Yeah, it's an old one. It has been heavily customized though, like, so it's not
I like the pick
parts. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of shiny. That's from Alperius Custom Pick Guards. He makes.
Oh, dope. Is he out there in Birmingham?
No, he's in Turkey actually, I think. Yeah.
Huh.
And but yeah, no, he makes these pick guards for a lot of bass players. And
Sweet.
then yeah, like these are Seymour Duncan custom, they're not custom, sorry. They're just Seymour Duncan Rickenbacker because they're not custom.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Sweet.
but yeah, like it's a very like kind of classic instrument,
Right,
Rickenbacker.
right. Yeah, I don't ever think of Rickenbackers as like a base for punk though. Like I mean
Not
maybe
maybe.
because of like they had a heavy influence in like prog rock and obviously McCartney with the Beatles. Well, just Rickenbacker and the Beatles. But when I think of like metal bass players, did I just say punk? I meant metal.
Oh yeah, you said punk, but
Okay,
yeah,
I'm
like
sorry. I meant metal. Um, yeah, but when I think of Rickenbacker basses, I don't go to metal. I go to probably something with active pickups, but just kind of like an Ibanez or whatever. I would see the pictures of
mhm.
like the dude from Korn playing.
Yeah.
What was it? Fieldy, I think was his name.
Yeah, no, I think you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. I think it depends on like the era that you're kind of looking at. I think any music genre that was that had a lot of development during like the 70s and early 80s definitely has some Rickenbacker players out there,
Okay.
especially like yeah, punk and metal. There's some like my one of my favorite bass players is Cliff Burton from
Sure.
Metallica, and he played a Rickenbacker
Oh,
for
I
quite
didn't
a
know
while.
that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And of
I mean,
course, Lemmy of
he's the one that
Motorhead,
died,
like,
right?
yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he
So
died
it's
in,
him, Jason Newsted, and now Robert.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I was just talking
yeah.
about Metallica bass players last night. That's the only
Oh,
reason.
okay,
That's
cool.
yeah. That's
That was
like
in recent
fresh in
memory. That's
mind.
good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Other than that, I'd be like, that was a long time ago. Like Cliff, Cliff with Metallica was the '80s still, right?
He died in 86, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah,
So yeah, he was only on the first three albums. But yeah, he had like yeah, he played a Rickenbacker for
I didn't
a lot of
know
the
that.
shows, recordings, which is yeah, no, I always thought they were really cool. And also Lemmy of Motorhead, like I guess
Hmm.
a lot of people are like, are Motorhead just a rock and roll band or are they metal? To
Hmm.
me, I feel like they're
Where do you
definitely on this.
stand?
For
Do you,
me, I think they're a metal band. Like
you
the
go
speed,
metal? Okay.
yeah, like it's basically like thrash with a more like up, I don't know, like an up tempo feeling, and then that kind of bluesy influence is still there. But there's no reason to say that metal isn't bluesy. Like it definitely is.
Right, right,
So
right.
yeah, no, I'd say they're a metal band.
Okay. Okay. So going back again. 13, starting the bass, getting into metal. Do you just learn from records? Were you taking private lessons with somebody, or was it just absorbing bass lines from albums?
So I was taking lessons from I had a few local there was over the years a few different local tutors. They were all unfortunately like guitarists as their main
It's always
um
a problem, yeah.
yeah, like there weren't really any bass teachers in the area where I was growing up. But it kind of I think in some ways it was really good for my playing. Like we did a lot of jamming. He'd be like playing chords and I'd be just kind of making something up and just feeling out because we do a lot of theory and yeah, just talk about how like the arpeggios build the chords and the scales and things like that. So we did
Sure.
a lot of that, but we didn't really do any slap bass whatsoever.
Okay.
And like I started trying to kind of figure out my own way of doing, things that are very particular to bass, like your finger picking style and slap. So that where it felt like I was like and then sorry, later on I went to university and studied music there, and that was when I got my first like dedicated bass tutor who was a bass player.
Okay.
That was a career, and then I had to like catch up quickly, like with the slap bass, because I was like, I have no idea what to do.
But then it's interesting that so going to a university and studying bass, then typically within like a normal institutionalized music thing, it's going to be classical or jazz. Like those are just what they teach. Did they teach popular music at the
Yeah, yeah,
university? Oh, okay.
yeah. So the course itself was like it's a dedicated school for contemporary music. So
Got it.
it
Okay.
was it's everything from like the 70s onward, really. And but it does encompass like jazz, and you do look at like how the genre has evolved and stuff.
Good.
But yeah, it's mostly in like pop and rock and that sort of stuff.
Okay. So then there was there was a place for you at the school being interested in metal.
Yeah, like
Okay.
there weren't as much, there wasn't as much as I guess most of the courses focused on more like indie rock because it's more popular at the time, and pop music and writing different kinds of songs like that. But there was a lot of metalheads there. I found my people, I found my crowd of other people who were just like obsessed with uh, you know, crazy metal music. But
Yeah.
yeah, we weren't the I don't know. Yeah, we weren't the majority. We were still like the subsection of like metalheads, but there are a lot more of us because I don't know if there's anything about metalheads. It's like they're super nerdy about their music. So if they yeah,
I think
if you're
people
already a
that are
nerd and you
deep,
like,
I think people that are deep in any genre, uh, have an element of they like being set aside. Like they like feeling unique and like that whatever they're into is the baddest thing. And then there's a level of, and I'm not saying this about you or metalheads. I'm thinking about jazz musicians as I say this. I
yeah,
do a lot of that, so I'm very familiar with those people. Um, and like, yeah, there's this kind of like puffed up nature about it. Like, we know everything, and our stuff's the best, and it's the most
yeah.
academic and the most like, dude, shut up. Just shut up. But every
Know what you mean? Yeah.
but then even people that are like super just songwriter guys or something like that, then they're talking crap about every other kind of music that's not whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, they're
Leonard
looking for like the
Cohen.
most extreme version of what they're getting into, the most
Yeah,
obscure or whatever. So, and it's
right,
like,
right,
you don't
right.
know that band? Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It is. It gets a little silly, but I guess it's a good thing that you found other metal people to connect to. Are those the people in your band?
No, so I moved away from the city where I was studying, and so now I've got a different group of metal friends up here in Birmingham. So before
Okay,
I was studying in Bristol, which is about 2 hours south. But yeah, I still
okay,
keep in touch with a lot of those guys. But yeah, I just found some musicians further north.
nice. So your teacher at the university, was he able to give you any guidance as a metal player?
Yeah, actually, like he didn't like seem it at first, but like the more we spoke about different genres and stuff, he was really into a lot of metal stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, I was in this Wasp cover band," and I'm like, "No way, Wasp! Like, I love, I love that band when I was 16, and like, this is cool."
I
And
know
he was
of them.
like,
I don't think I've heard them.
yeah, but yeah, they're more like kind of glam, shock rock, hair metal kind of stuff. They're
Okay.
a bit like Motley Crue, but like heavier, and I think they're cooler. But
Are they
anyway,
American? Or are they
yes,
okay?
yeah. But they did a cover of "The Real Me" by The Who,
Okay.
and like the bass player plays like the full bass line, and so my teacher was like, "Okay, yeah, fine, I'll join your Wasp covers band, but we have to play "The Real Me" by The Who because I want to play that cool bass line." And I'm like, "Yeah, that is a cool bass line. Let's learn
Yeah,
that."
yeah, yeah. Who's the bass teacher?
Stuart Clayton,
Oh,
he was writing
okay.
for Baseline Publishing, and yeah,
Yeah, I
he's
know
got a lot of
Stuart. He's been on the
stuff.
podcast.
Yes. Oh
Cool
yeah,
guy.
cool.
Cool
Yeah,
guy.
he's cool.
He knows a lot about music and bass history. A lot about bass history. A lot about bass history.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
really informed guy. That's great. He seems like a great guy to study with.
Yeah, no, he was great. Like, I think when I started learning with him, it was quite intimidating because I'd never learned bass in a group setting before because it was like there was 8 of us in the class, and I felt like the other players had maybe learned from a bassist bass tutor, if you know what I mean. Like they
Yeah.
seemed to already have an idea of like slap bass, whereas I'd just been noodling around with just jamming and playing arpeggios, and they were like really quick at picking songs up. They were learning songs real quickly by ear. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. But Stuart was very encouraging, and yeah, like I think I managed to catch up with them during
Nice.
those couple of years studying, and that was definitely all down to Stuart and his encouragement.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so you you leave school, you leave the university, you come back to Birmingham. Um, are you playing specifically metal, or are you now that you're introduced and got some awareness of some different kinds of music, are you starting to broaden and play some other things? Although metal's still your heart, are you performing in some other groups?
So I also played in a grunge band called Hands Off Gretel. They're kind of on a little bit of a break at the moment between albums, but yeah,
Okay.
so I do kind of, it's still within that kind of spectrum of like metal and grunge and punk and stuff. But I think when I was at university and fresh out of university, I was just taking any gig I could get. So
Sure.
when I was fresh out of it, I was, doing like as much like any funk and jazz and anything that I could get, I was doing. But over time, when I could be a bit more fussy about the gigs I was taking and the kind of work I was doing, I was more like, okay, let's hone in on this metal thing, because like nobody wants to come to a jazz gig and the bass player looks like this. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You could get someone who's actually really good at jazz to do that.
Yeah.
So I kind of decided to just dive into the metal thing a bit more and focus more on that. And it's been great. I've just been on tour with a band called Merciful Fate, and they were kind of a big one of the really like quite big bands of like the early 80s.
Okay.
Start of the kind of more extreme metal scene. And
what bands would be
well.
what bands were their contemporaries, just for kind of like to place that band in the history of metal when they were really big doing their thing? Who were the other bands around?
So I guess they think they formed around 81. So
Okay.
they'd be like around the time of Metallica. However, like their early demos kind of influenced Metallica as well. So it was in this time where things were kind of moving very fast in the metal genre.
Yeah.
And I guess Venom. I'm trying to think of some other like early 80s, like, because they're a European band. They're from Denmark.
Okay.
So
How
yeah,
far
I'm
is
guessing.
Denmark from you?
I guess you get on a plane and it would be about 2 hours, maybe an hour
Okay,
and a
not
half.
a terrible flight.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, no, no. But yeah, I'm guessing they'd be kind of influenced by those sorts of bands. Definitely Judas Priest would have been definitely a key influence on Merciful Fates. Yeah, but they
Is
kind of brought more like of the satanic elements and more extreme in the kind of horror and theatrical visual thing, which I think then influenced more extreme bands like black metal and death metal that kind of borrowed things from them in that way.
when the bands get into, I've always been curious about this. When bands get into like the really gnarly level of horror and maybe some satanic elements in their music, what do they like off stage?
All the ones that I've met
Do
have
they
been really
really
nice.
live that? Are
Yeah.
they really like that all the time, or is it just like, can you watch like see a heavy metal guitar player, but like in his personal time he's got like a light blue polo shirt, no makeup, no, is he just kind of a normal dude, and then he puts on the show and
Yeah,
like with the
generally I'd
Satan
say
thing
most
and the
of
whole
them.
bit?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, most of them are just like anyone else. It's an interest, and or maybe it's part of their life that doesn't take up their whole life. Like, just
Okay.
if you have a particular religious, um, a way that you do your religion, that doesn't impact everything. You can still be pretty normal most of the time and
Sure.
be just friendly and normal. But I don't know. I think there are definitely some out there that are more like, extremely serious, like that kind of it seeps into their normal life. And yeah, there's a whole like element of metal which is very it's very right wing, it's very white supremacist, it's like very extreme in like I don't know exactly what happened, but like it went too far. Like
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. Of
it's just like
course.
the hate is so like you're like, okay, yeah, we're hating, and maybe we hate Christianity and we hate being forced religious like standards upon us, but we don't hate. We're not gonna like go killing people. We're not that far like into this
Right.
whole hatred thing. We're not racists. We're not white supremacists. Like no, but yeah, no, there are elements of heavy metal that have gone that far, and it sometimes it's hard to like pick out who's where, and like, is it just a show? Like, is that real blood you're using?
Right.
And that kind of thing. So yeah, that took a dark turn, but yeah, no,
No, no, no,
it's
but
something
that's
we
all
should be
fascinating
talking
to me.
about. Yeah,
That's all fascinating to me. Because you're right. There is a lot of, because the music is so aggressive, and there's a
yeah,
lot of hate in it, and bands that have like maybe a strong satanic presence or something are gonna talk about hating Christianity, and then you're dealing with hate on a metaphysical level. Like that's a lot of hate.
Yeah.
You're dealing with
Yeah.
like not only worldly hate, but like metaphysical hate. Like that's a
Yeah.
lot. Um,
Yeah.
how do you personally go about it with being around that kind of energy so regularly, but not just carrying it with you? Like there has to be some kind of detachment to it, or a way that you can clear your mind from it, so you're not just
Yeah.
walking through the supermarket filled with hate towards anybody who might believe in God or something. You know what I mean? Like just have all this intense level of hate in your day-to-day life. How do you protect yourself from being around it and not letting it seep in?
I guess like I no, I don't have that much hate in my heart. I know,
That's
I feel
good.
like,
That's
and
good.
most of the
That's
most of
good.
the metalheads, most of like people that I know in my bands and my circles are not like that either.
Okay.
And I think you might think, oh, okay, you get into metal, then you get into like hating religion, and then you get into like hating particular types of religion that are not white religions, and then you start becoming a racist. None of that. It doesn't happen like that. It happens usually the other way around. Like you're full of hate and you're already like into some dark stuff, and then you find a way to let that out, and you find this group of people, and then you end up in like the kind of the weird racist corner of
Yeah, yeah,
metal
yeah,
people.
yeah.
And like that, it goes in a different way. Like I don't think metal encourages you to I don't think it is a pipeline to become more full hate filled, but I guess for some people it's kind of an outlet for it, and if they're already that way inclined, I suppose. But most of my friends are like the friendliest, most like welcoming, accepting people that I know. I mean, they're very willing to remind people about the problems within certain religions, but they're not hating anyone for any. There's no prejudice there. It's all
Hmm.
just kind of like, yeah, you shouldn't judge me. There's also bad things about the Christian religion, for example, and others. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Makes
it
sense.
does. But again, you bring up another fascinating idea where it's not. It is an outlet for those. But I think one of the beautiful things about any genre of music is it's not only an outlet for someone, the artist, whoever is conveying it, but it's also then influencing a generation
Yeah,
in a certain way, and that happens across the board in any genre of music. It's going to be someone's release, but then it's going to be someone else's intake. So there's
yeah,
always an exchange in it. So what someone is releasing could then be informing, and then it becomes circular, and that's whatever. There's no way to safeguard that, I mean,
yeah,
music is there's room for everybody. Um, but it is fascinating that the aggression that's in metal. It seems to me. Do you think it goes too far at times with metal? Do you think some groups take the thing too far? Like, hey, you're if it's getting into something that's like the racist and killing people, it's like, okay, like, can we just back off?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think anything that promotes any kind of prejudice is too far.
absolutely.
Anything that promotes, I don't know. Then there's like about promoting violence, but like a lot of metal music is just kind of about violence, and it's not like
And then
I
given
guess
the nature of the music, like it's gonna get your blood going, and it's aggressive, and it's gonna, you know,
yeah,
ignite a lot of energy,
yeah, and I
which
think
drives violence. No one does
yeah.
like sleepy, some kind of sleepy violent crime. Like violence is typically pretty aggressive.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess it's like the age-old like argument about video games, are they promoting violence and movies and stuff. But I
Sure.
think it's for a lot of people, it's just it is actually kind of soothing to them, and they feel a lot calmer having listened to some aggressive music. Like when I'm not in a good mood, if I listen to aggressive music, I feel a lot calmer afterwards.
Like
I
it
feel like
scratches the itch and kind of
yeah,
gives you that. It breaks the
yeah,
tension.
yeah.
Interesting.
So there's that kind of just making music for that purpose, and as an outlet for your frustrations that
Sure.
aren't aimed at any particular group, I guess. It's the problem is when you are I don't know, a group of people with more power and you're attacking a group with less
Sure.
power. I think,
Sure.
like I think when I find it uncomfortable when artwork or anything is highly like sexual and violent against women. I find that uncomfortable for me. And similar examples like that, if you're talking about white nationalistic things in your lyrics, then that's like, why? Like, this is not
Yeah.
what I don't think this is what metal should be about. Like, most people who are metalheads understand that they've or perceive themselves to be some kind of outsider or outcast. So why would you attack a group that's kind of smaller than you in the countries where metal is most common? It's generally in white countries. So
Sure.
why would you try and push people away from that, because you've already been pushed aside? And okay, maybe that's why you're frustrated and angry, but like, this isn't the people who did this to you. The people
Right.
who picked on you at school are not the people that you're attacking or
Right.
anything like that. That's kind of
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
where
Is
I'm at
there
with that.
is there you run into that a lot? Do you run into a lot of white nationalists and Aryan Nation folks?
Not really. Like, you occasionally, you hear about them. They do exist.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, obviously, there's
it's
a disgusting
it's
history of in America about it all.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think they're definitely out there. I guess a lot of them lay low, like, or because I've never really, I don't think I've really met any.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just kind of hide that part of them. But like, yeah, there are some out there that do end up on lineups of like particular festivals, and it is a bit like, okay, really?
Yeah, but then at those festivals, I mean, I'm sure that you can recognize it in the crowd, like a strong
Yeah.
presence of that
Well,
community.
yeah. Yeah, like, I don't know, there'll be people with like certain patches on their jackets, and you'd be like, the hell, dude, like, don't you know what no, it won't be like, no, they won't be as blatant as like a racist patch,
Right.
but they could be, a band that has ties with like
A
racism,
soft
and then
way
it's like,
to, yeah, it's a soft way to be like, I'm a part
yeah,
of that via
it,
them.
yeah, it's a bit of
Yeah.
like a dog whistle. And so if you're like in the know, you'd be like, nah,
Yeah.
nah,
Yeah.
I'm not hanging out with this guy. Let's go.
Nice. What is it? Nice simile, nice metaphor, like a dog whistle. Like
Yeah.
only those that can hear it hear it. I like that.
Yeah.
I like the imagery of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But the thing about them is like, if you learn about these dog whistles, you take away their power. So the more that people know what those things mean, the less that they can communicate with each other under the radar.
Yeah. Is there any kind of presence in the metal community where you're at to what would be a good word? Try to disband a lot of the hate towards other social groups? Like, is there a counterweight? Like there's bands that may be racist or very white power or white privilege, whatever their thing is. Is there also groups that are trying to combat that energy within the
Yeah.
metal thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think um there's like maybe like some groups like the Sophie Lancaster Foundation. I mean, that was based out as a alternative, alternative person who got attacked and killed because she was alternative. But it's kind of become a kind of overarching thing of like tolerance and so
What's it called?
sorry, it's the Sophie Lancaster Foundation.
Sophie
Sophie
Lancaster.
Lancaster was a teenage girl who was attacked near her home and killed by some people because she looked different. And but they try and promote like tolerance and understanding and hate crimes and stuff like this. And I think other bands that are challenging it, like bands involving non-white people of color and stuff, such as a band called Zeal and Ardor. they have really interesting concepts in their music, and it's kind of challenging, especially how black metal as a subgenre has some of these kind of white nationalistic like overtones, like in, I wouldn't, definitely not in all of it, but like there is some in there. I think people were talking about, I think it was on 4chan. Do you know 4chan? That terrible website back in the day. Okay, yeah, it's this like terrible website. It's like red. It's called 4chan, and
FORCHAN.
Yeah, like, with the number 4. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's kind of like a Reddit like forum thing, but
okay.
Just no rules. It was just like chaos.
That could be
but
a bad thing.
People were on there were kind of discussing like, put together 2 genres of music that would never work, and they were like, you couldn't have like black like gospel like slave chanting type music. You couldn't combine that with black metal because it wouldn't work, because they're opposing, because black metal has this kind of racist overtone. And some guy was like, I bet you can combine these genres, and he does, and he kind of blends black music with black metal, and it's just glorious. And I think that's the best thing for like breaking down those barriers is just having more bands, more people of color in the community of those genres. And so you have to be like, well, you have to listen to them now.
Right. How do you think that, or why do you think, maybe you know a more specific answer than just a guess, but why do you think that those ideas have permeated that music the way they have? The ideas of racism and stuff like that. Does it go back to like the founding members of Black Sabbath or something? Did they have
no, I don't think so.
I don't think, I haven't heard of anything like that, but you know more about it than I do.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back enough in Black Sabbath's music, it's very heavily influenced by blues. So you keep going back, and you always go back to like black people anyway, like that kind of music, that influence. Right. So I mean, I would say it's the way it wants to be more and more extreme and push boundaries all the time. And it will be in any direction. And when you start bringing in like the kind of interest in violence, because, there is a kind of interest in like horror and the stuff we talked about early on before we took a very like deep dark turn.
No, I'm into it. I'm into it all.
It does like attract people who, as I said before, just like have hatred on their minds, and they will find any way to pin that. And there's also this kind of crowd mentality about it. I think, as you said, like almost like, I don't know, like a hierarchy, and if you're in this little circle, then if you band together, no one can hurt you, and you can do things. Be like above other people, and you could be above the law. You can.
It's kind of elitist. Like anybody who gets into any specific genre, like I know jazz guys have the elitist thing. Whatever. Different genres of people all have their element of elitism. So that's what I was referring to when we were.
Yeah, and I think when these there's like the elitism, and then people are trying to outdo each other for how violent and how just awful they can be,
how far they can push the boundaries within kind of the rules, the imaginary rules that make up the elitism thing. There's like these imaginary rules about it, and then who can go the furthest within that to kind of be the best, or be the person that changes the game or something. Yeah,
and I think they're making it out to shock you. Right. They want to be shocking, and so they're like, what's going to upset people the most? Like, and then I don't know. It's quite like, it's just kind of sad in a lot of ways. It's obviously people who have been, possibly just been feel so good disconnected from society that and like maybe some like messed up stuff has happened in their life. Not to like say that it excuses it, but like it's just sad that those kind of people can exist, and that they are in our metal community. I mean, I'm sure like there's people,
I think they exist in any musical community, because I mean, music is just people. So if people are damaged, that's going to come out in the art that they create because that's what they have to give.
Yeah, but yeah, it becomes more of a performance in metal than I guess in country music.
It seems a
It's,
little
you
bit
know, you
more
still have to.
glorified in
Yeah,
metal
yeah,
music and rock music that um this, how do I put it? Almost like a victim mentality that they're going to reconcile and rise above through music.
yeah,
Not because they're releasing this beautiful art into the world, about hope and things like that, but just like aggressive force. I'm going to show you kind of mentality.
yeah.
And again, that exists in any kind of music, because that's just people and how they respond to whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said it like about revenge. It's people who are very angry at the world and they're upset. And, maybe something in their political landscape have told them like the things that are wrong with the world is that or those people or this
Sure.
thing that's happening. And they want to fight against that instead.
Yeah. So, given that Birmingham is kind of the, home ground for metal, and there is now a correlation between that and satanic ideas or a lot of ideas of horror and the occult and stuff. What's the national religion there? Is it Catholicism?
Yeah, no, I guess overall it's most schools are like Protestant or Catholic
Okay.
schools, Christian schools. I think now the last census we had in England showed that there are more. I think the most the biggest group of people is actually atheists now
Oh,
or agnostics.
okay.
Yeah, we're
So
mostly
people
now
just really
not
not
religious.
chiming in. I
Yeah,
mean, atheism, I mean, that's those people, that's typically a very big part of their life, because those people are typically very adamant about, like, yeah, there's no God. No God. And so, like, the idea of a spiritual realm is still heavy on their mind, but they're just not associating with anything, and they kind of don't believe in any of it. So do you think it's more atheist or more agnostic, which um fundamentally, a quick little bit about those two terms. Fundamentally, atheism did, I mean, just to take the word, means without theology. So that doesn't mean you don't believe in God. That means you are without any kind of theology about a spiritual way of thinking. So kind of agnostic and atheism have switched over the years. Atheism now means you don't believe in God, and agnostic means, like, I don't know. I don't really want to think about it, which in actuality, I understand them to be the opposite. Atheism, by definition, is you're without theology, so you have nothing. And then there may be another term where you purposely and deliberately don't believe in a God, because that, by construct, is a theology.
I see what you mean.
Anyways,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's a
Okay.
long way around the thing. I don't know why I said any of that, but uh, so the census is saying that it's agnostic. There's a lot of the
Yeah.
population there that is just like, yeah, I don't know, and I don't want to think about it, and maybe later in life I'll deal with it. Is that kind of the mindset of the populace there?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think yeah, I guess like most people are just kind of I'm open-minded. I see that there are so many different ways to be religious or to be non-religious,
Mm-hmm.
and I just don't know. And how can I know? And should
Sure.
I even know? Like that maybe it's fine to just not know and just exist like, you know, like most creatures on this earth would just
Right.
like, don't know, mate, like, do I really need all this? We'll
Yeah.
see.
Right.
Yeah.
Unrelated to religion, I was thinking about this earlier today, though. I have no idea why I was thinking about it, but I know what led me there. There's a show, I don't know if it's on the television over there. It was on Netflix, called, what was it called? They would put these people on an island, and the people had to survive for themselves. And not now, it wasn't Survivor, the game show. It was a reality show. They just had to live off the land. They were allowed to
Mhm.
bring so many items, and whoever stayed the longest won the show. Whatever it was, like $50,000. And so I'm watching the show, And I'm realizing, like, wow, primitive people, that's all they did all day. Is like they solely existed to survive. That's it. There's no, like, I can't imagine them having recreation. Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe they came up with some little game to amuse themselves or to stay active. But point in all this is like to live instinctually like that, like what you were talking about, like everybody else, every other thing on the planet, maybe not chiming into the spiritual nature. I think humans are the only ones that have a consciousness, and there's no way to test it. Or if you have read something, let me know. That have a consciousness. Like, I don't think a dolphin knows it's a dolphin. They're just doing dolphin stuff, and that's it. Like, we know we're humans. And we communicate with humans, and we have personal interests, and we can investigate those instruments. I mean, the fact that we're, right here on this podcast now talking about bass and music and all that stuff, that's a perfect example of just us pursuing individual interests. But I don't think animals have that.
I don't know. I kind of, I mean, I don't know.
Do?
Yeah. Yeah, really? I do. Yeah.
I know they have personalities. But I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, what makes it different to a conscience?
Yeah, right. I'm just thinking like a sense of consciousness where they know, like, does a cat know it's a cat?
I mean,
like stuff like that. Like, we know we're human, and
yeah,
we
but
know
I mean, it would know
things.
Other cats are cats because it knows, like, that's a fellow cat. I will do fellow cat things to it, like say meow and like rustle my whiskers.
They speak my language.
If a person comes, actually, did you know that like cats meow a certain way when they're speaking to people because they have a certain frequency for us.
They have a human tone and a cat tone.
Yeah,
really?
they have a certain thing that they say just for people to get our attention.
Are you a cat person?
Yeah, I do like cats. Yeah.
Do you have a cat?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
Have you ever noticed? Can you hear the difference between a cat talking to a cat and then like a cat trying to get your attention?
I think so. I mean, I've only ever heard cats actually, like, when they actually make sounds to each other, it's normally in an aggressive way because they tend to use more like body language to communicate with it between each other. Unless if they're being aggressive, they usually just use body language to interact. But to humans, and not like don't need to yowl and like be horrible to us when they just want some food. If they're like, hello, I need your attention, I need food, they're not going to start like screeching at us. They're just going to make like nice noises and
to get what they want.
That's what they do. So that's their particular noise for us. so yeah, they know that like they can interact with us, but it has to be in a different way to our fellow cats.
yeah. What's the history of the cat? Like, I know the dog comes from the wolf, with the exception of a Chihuahua that comes from the fox.
Really?
Where does the cat come from? Because there's a lot of wild cats in the world. You got cheetahs, leopards, lions, all that stuff. Where does the domesticated cat come from?
I think they're pretty similar to like wild cats. So they're still like wild cats now, and then they're similar size. But I think they were just slightly bigger, a bit more tough looking.
Because they don't seem the need to, like, dogs kind of, the understanding who's alpha is still a big thing in domesticated dogs. I used to have a cat. I never have noticed that in any cat. Like, this kind of, they're trying to figure out who alpha is between two cats. I've never lived with two cats though, so I don't know how that dynamic is. Well, so then when I didn't see that, I'm like, how is this related to the wild kingdom?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess because cats don't really, I don't know. I mean, I guess they do kind of have family structures, but they don't move as much in like packs like dogs do, I suppose.
Right.
And so they don't establish those kind of things. Like I've had, 3 cats before, and, it depends on their own, but they do have their own kind of hierarchy thing. I had 3 male cats at them at one time, and
oh, wow.
they just
okay.
did not get on.
Okay.
So, and then once like some of my friends stayed with me for a few months, and they had 3 cats, and the two female cats were quite like aggressive towards each other.
Oh wow.
So there is that. I guess it's kind of a similar thing to wild dogs and stuff.
Interesting. Let's bring it back to music.
Sorry. Okay,
No, that's what I do. I go off on these long tangents. We started on like, oh, that's a Rickenbacker. Like, what do you think racism is
there's
about?
A dolphin. No, it's a dolphin.
Yeah, I know. I forgot about the dolphin. Right, there was a dolphin in there. What do you got coming up?
This year, like some touring within the UK with my band Fury. We're gonna write the next album. That's the plan.
What album number is this for that band?
This is the band's 5th album, but it's the 3rd one that I've been on. So.
Okay. Cool. Is that session booked? Are you guys working on? Are you right now like curating the tunes to go into the studio, or are you just booking the time and writing in the studio?
Yeah. So our vocalist Julian, he writes gets the ideas for the songs down, like the kind of top line and a lot of the basic chords. So yeah, those demos are coming through. Then we'll be kind of working on the demos, like going into the studio, but just rehearsal room and kind of flesh them out a bit more, see how we feel.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that'll be, I think, that'll be the plan for the next 6 months. So we're kind of taking it a bit easier on the touring side this year.
Right, just to get out another record and then back to the road with it.
I mean, we always try and like take as many gigs as we can, and then we realize like, it's been 4 years since the last album. Like, we don't have any time to record what's going on.
You're right, or just write new tunes.
Yeah, because like we released so the 2 ones that are already out that I've been on. First one was released in 2020 in April, so it was like release it and then it's like straight into lockdown, no touring, nothing. And so we started working on the next album straight away because we were like, well, what's the point? Like, we can't tour, we might as well do another album. And so we managed to get the next one out early 2022. So that was good. But now we're like, okay, now we've got to somehow go back to juggling touring and writing and recording and everything. So we'll see if we can do another like 2-year turnaround between each album. That'd be great. But I mean, life gets in the way sometimes now that we're allowed to leave our houses.
That's awesome. Becky, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great. It's been
really that was that whole thing went a place I never saw it going, but that's my favorite. I love when that happens.
That was great.
Yeah, and then let me know when the next record comes out. I'll have you back on to talk about the record.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we'll do.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Becky.
Cool. Thank you very much. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, if you are enjoying the Bass Shed podcast, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening to it. And also go to thebasshed.com/podcast. There's a little media player there. And just under the media player, click on the button. Take you to all the podcast platforms. Subscribe wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. All right, that was my talk with Becky Baldwin. Fantastic perspective and very informed about metal and very insightful how she communicated it to someone who didn't know, like myself. There was a lot of good stuff in there for me to learn more about just music I'm not that familiar with. So it was great hearing from her. Again, stop by BeckyBaldwinBass.com to learn more. I look forward to having her on after her and her band Fury come out with their new record. I'm interested to hear it because, I feel like I'll have more of a connection to the music after having connected with her about the music. I'll be able to dig a little deeper and understand the music on a different level. That always is important to me. Like being able, after I connect with someone who's created the music, going back and listening to the music has a different impact on me, is what I meant to say. So I am looking forward to checking out that record, and I'm looking forward to having her back on the show to discuss it. That's about all I got for this one, folks. That's all I got. I'll catch you on the next one in a minute.